Like and subscribe to PalsFundamentals on YouTube for more videos like this. Sources linked below. Welcome to this news regional report. Today we're looking at some recent developments happening across the North Atlantic based on various news sources.
And just to be clear, our aim here is simply to report on the information we've gathered. We won't be adding any of our own opinions or speculation.
Exactly. Let's kick things off in Greenland. What's happening there on the social front?
Well, looking at child welfare, a new report from Greenland Statistics highlights something significant. The number of children in family care, it's remained stable between 2022 and 2024, but it's also remained high.
Stable but high. Okay, what's the takeaway from that?
Bonnie Jensen,
Yeah.
she's a lecturer and center leader at CARE at Lycémat that's the University of Greenland. She suggests this persistently high number might mean children are actually being placed in care too early. She really emphasizes that out-of-home placement should be, the absolute last resort.
Right. So it's not just that they're in care, but when and maybe why. Are there specific areas where this is more pronounced?
Absolutely. Tasiilaq comes up specifically. It has the highest number of children in care, not just in raw numbers, but also relative to its population size.
Okay.
And those numbers actually went up from 73 in December 2022 to 96 by December 2024.
So what's driving that in Tasiilaq?
Jensen points to a couple of things. One is a lack of alternative placement options besides foster families.
Limited choices.
Exactly. And there's also an effort to avoid placing children from the East Coast, where Tasiilaq is, onto the West Coast because of, cultural differences. It really shows the complexity of providing the right kind of care in such a diverse place.
Understandable. So given those challenges, what's being proposed? Any solutions on the table?
The main push from Jensen is for more proactive support, helping families before a placement becomes necessary.
Prevention, basically.
Precisely. She talks about using family counseling more effectively, trying to find resources within the extended family first. Research generally shows kids do better when placed with relatives, if possible.
Makes sense. Strengthening those existing networks. Okay, let's shift gears to Greenland's economy. I heard there's some positive news on unemployment.
There is, headline-wise at least,
Yeah.
a significant drop over the last 10 years, about 65.7% between 2014 and 2023.
That sounds pretty dramatic.
It is, but the picture isn't quite uniform across the country.
Okay. How so?
Well, you've got larger towns like Nuuk, Ilulissat, and Manak, really low unemployment, around 2% in 2023.
Very low.
But then you look at areas like Tasiilaq again, Kangatsiaq, Pamiut, and Narsak.
Right.
They're facing much higher rates. We're talking 9, 10, even 11%.
And why the disparity?
Often it simply comes down to a lack of available jobs in those specific regions.
Right, a jobs mismatch or just scarcity. So what are people saying needs to be done about that?
Sophie Svensson, she's the local Sikh trade union chair in Nuuk, stresses the need for more investment in training, upskilling the unemployed so they can actually fill the job vacancies that do exist in different sectors.
Training is key.
And Christian Kjeldsen from Greenland Business, he echoes that. He highlights the growing need for a more educated workforce overall. He's actually calling for a national conversation about what skills are needed and, interestingly, also about the potential role of foreign labor.
So looking both internally at training and externally at potential immigration, okay? How about the political scene in Greenland? Anything happening there?
Yes, in Commune Kikkertalik, there's been some, let's say, political turbulence after the municipal elections.
Yeah.
Initial coalition talks fell apart, but it seems like things might be settling. Inuit Ataqatigiit, Nalarak, and Democratic are reportedly close to finalizing a new coalition deal.
And what would that likely mean for leadership?
The expectation is that Simigak Haman, she's from Democrat and got the most votes in the municipality, will become the new mayor.
Okay. And does that have any wider implications?
It could. If Haman takes the mayoral position, she'll likely have to resign her seat in the Inatsisartut, the national parliament.
Right.
And that could open the door for Napatok Petrussen from Commune Kujalek to take her place. So, potential ripple effect. The new council is set to meet on May 2nd.
And what about the parties not in this likely coalition?
Well, Siumut's group leader in the municipality has already stated they're preparing to be a strong opposition party.
Okay, noted. And finally, from Greenland, some local crime news.
Yeah, a bit of a rough night recently in Nuuk. There was a series of break-ins.
Whereabouts?
Targets included the local museum, a youth center, and also a private home.
Oh, dear. Anything taken?
From the private home, yes. A car key was stolen, and then, unfortunately, the car itself was taken too.
Right.
And the police report also mentioned it was a busy night generally, dealing with alcohol-related issues, public disorder, domestic disturbances right across the coast. But most of it seemed concentrated in Nuuk.
Okay, thanks for that Greenland roundup. Let's move over to Iceland now. What's the feeling there regarding defense?
Well, a recent Gallup poll provides a pretty clear snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of Icelanders, something like 72%, are opposed to creating an Icelandic military.
Really? That strong in opposition?
Yeah, only about 14% are actually in support. It's quite decisive.
Interesting. Any differences within the population?
There are. Men are somewhat more likely to support the idea than women, roughly 20% compared to 8%. And political affiliation plays a big role, too.
How so?
For instance, about a quarter of Center Party voters are in favor, but on the other end, you have Socialist Party supporters. 94% of them are opposed.
So a strong national sentiment against it with some variations. Got it. What else is happening in Iceland? Any legal developments?
Yes, quite a significant one from the Highland Commission, the Obíknavnd. They've ruled against the Icelandic state's claim to own certain uninhabited islands and skerries.
Which ones specifically?
Those within 2 kilometers of the mainland. The commission decided these actually belong to the nearest mainland property owner, unless there's specific legal proof saying otherwise.
Okay, and what was the basis for this ruling? Modern law.
Actually, no, and that's what makes it fascinating. A key part of the ruling relies on a provision from John's book.
John's book? That sounds old.
It is. It's a law code enacted way back in 1281.
Wow.
And the commission deemed that 700-year-old provision is still valid today. The state had filed claims on lots of these islands where ownership wasn't clear under the public lands law, the Jóagerlindalög.
So a medieval law is shaping modern land ownership. Remarkable.
It really is. It underscores how deep those historical legal roots run.
Okay, and finally from Iceland, I understand there's a difficult human story involving a young person.
Yes, it's a really tough situation concerning a teenager named Oscar. He was deported to Colombia last October, along with his father, who was reportedly abusive.
Deported with the abusive father.
That's the report. He was then apparently abandoned by his father in Bogotá, which is known to be dangerous. A benefactor managed to bring him back to Iceland.
Thank goodness for that. So he's safe now.
Well, that's the problem. The Directorate of Immigration, the Útlendingastofnun, has just issued a final ruling. He has to leave Iceland again within 15 days.
Leave again? Why?
And he's barred from returning for 2 years. The original deportation happened because his father's asylum application was denied.
But Oscar himself, he'd reported the abuse, right?
Yes, and had reportedly found a stable home situation in Iceland before that initial deportation. His father had originally fled Colombia because of threats from criminal gangs over refusing to pay bribes.
And Oscar fears returning?
He definitely does. He's expressed fear for his life if sent back, citing the risk of gangs recruiting children there. It's a very concerning case, raising questions about child welfare within the asylum system.
Indeed, a very troubling situation. Okay, let's move east now to the Faroe Islands, starting with some brighter news sports.
Yes, definitely some good news. The Faroes women's national handball team has qualified for the World Championship.
Fantastic. Where's that being held?
In Germany and the Netherlands this December, they actually lost the second leg of their qualifier against Lithuania, but only by 1 goal.
Close one.
But their 10-goal win in the home game was enough to see them through overall.
Great result for them. Any insights into their success?
The team captain, Pernille Brandenborg, gave credit to the really strong home crowd support. She also mentioned the development of their younger players, many of whom are now getting experience playing in leagues in Denmark.
Building talent. Good to hear. When do they find out who they play?
The draw for the World Championship is coming up in May.
Okay, something to look forward to. Shifting topics now, there's something happening regarding media professionals' rights.
That's right. It involves solidarity from Greenland, actually. The Greenlandic Media Association has publicly expressed full support for their Faroes counterparts, Faroisk Folk.
Support for what specifically?
For their fight to get negotiating rights for members who work in the public sector, particularly those at Kringvarp Føroya, the Faroes public broadcaster.
They don't have negotiating rights currently.
Apparently not under their own specific union agreement. The Greenlandic Association finds it unacceptable that they're denied this right, which media professionals have elsewhere in the Danish realm.
So it's an issue of parity.
Exactly. They're urging the Faroes government to recognize the right of these professionals to organize and negotiate collectively. It's gone quite far. Faroisk Folk has actually sued the government over this refusal.
Sued the government. Wow.
Yes, and they have the backing of all the other Nordic media unions. Their argument is fundamental.
Hmm.
The right for a profession to be represented by its own union is basic, and it's standard practice in neighboring countries.
Okay, a significant labor dispute there. Let's look at the Faroes economy. Any major trends in trade?
Yes, some quite noticeable shifts. Imports saw a significant drop, especially in fish and fish extracts meant for processing locally.
How big a drop?
It contributed to nearly a billion krónur reduction in the total import value for the year ending February 2025 compared to the year before.
A billion krónur, that's substantial. Anything else contributing?
Lower imports of fuel and ships also played a part. And looking broader, imports of machinery, engines, and vehicles were down too, with ships being the biggest factor in that specific category decline.
Okay, so imports are generally down. What about the other side of the coin, exports?
Also some significant movements there. Exports of fish meal and fish oil decreased by almost a billion krónur as well.
Matching the import drop somewhat?
Kind of, yeah. Now, it wasn't all down. Exports of some key species like salmon, haddock, saithe, and mackerel actually increased in value. But most other fish species saw declines.
Interesting mix. Anything notable about salmon?
Yeah, the export value for salmon stayed pretty stable, even though the volume exported went up by 14%.
Huh. How does that work?
Lower average prices.
Hmm.
That's partly due to a general price dip, but also because there was a shift towards exporting more unprocessed salmon rather than processed products.
I see. Any other export standouts?
Mackerel values saw a big jump, mostly because prices went up, even though the volume exported actually dipped slightly.
Mhm.
And there was also a significant increase in the export value of what's categorized as other uses, non-food, that's mostly fish offal.
Okay, a complex picture in the fisheries sector then. And finally, for the Faroes, I understand there's a debate about ownership in that very industry.
There is. It centers on the current law about foreign ownership in fishing. That law says foreign ownership should be phased out completely by January 1st, 2032.
Okay, a clear deadline. Is everyone sticking to that?
Well, the current coalition government says it intends to uphold the law. However, two parties that were actually involved in passing that law originally, the People's Party and the Union Party, have now indicated they might be open to allowing foreign capital to hold minority stakes.
A change of heart, potentially.
Seems like it. The former fisheries minister for the People's Party has said he thinks totally excluding foreign capital is the wrong approach.
But not everyone agrees.
No. You have voices, like a representative from the Republic Party, arguing it's a matter of principle. They maintain the fishing resources belong to the Faroes people, and therefore ownership should be 100% Faroes.
Principle versus pragmatism, perhaps? What's the likely outcome?
It looks like if there's a shift towards a right-leaning majority in the Faroes Parliament in the future, there's a good chance the legislation would be amended to allow some level of minority foreign ownership.
Okay, one to watch. Let's move finally to Shetland. What's the news from there? Starting with healthcare.
Things seem quite strained at the moment. NHS Shetland has had to cancel non-urgent surgical procedures at the Gilbert Bain Hospital in Lerwick.
Why is that?
Sustained high demand, basically. Across both the hospital and community services, it's led to the hospital operating at full capacity, and they made this decision, described as difficult, to ensure patient safety given their current staffing levels.
Right, safety first. Are essential services still running?
Yes. They've been clear that emergency surgery and urgent cancer treatments are continuing as planned.
Good to know.
And outpatient clinics and other hospital departments are still open, though some might adjust hours. We're working with community health and social care partners to try and improve patient flow and ease the pressure.
Okay, a challenging time for NHS Shetland. What else is happening? Any industrial news?
There is potential for strike action among council staff. Unison, the union representing them, is balloting members over a pay offer from the employers' organization, KOSLA.
What's the offer?
3%. Unison has called it pitiful.
Strong words. Why such a strong reaction?
They're pointing to the rising cost of living, energy bills, rent, council tax, and arguing this offer just isn't enough and is pushing essential staff into financial hardship.
Are they comparing it to other sectors?
They are. They highlight that the Scottish government recently offered health workers a higher raise, 4.25%, and argue council staff are just as vital and deserve parity.
What are they asking for?
Unison Scotland wants a 6.5% increase for all local government workers. The strike ballot itself is running from May 1st through to June 12th.
Okay, another situation to keep an eye on. Unfortunately, I also heard about some community safety issues.
Yes, sadly. Police in Shetland received a large number of reports, around 50, concerning vehicle vandalism in Lerwick. This happened on Sunday, April 6th.
50 reports, that's a lot.
It is. And around the same time, a glass pane at Sound Primary School was also smashed. Police Scotland confirmed they're investigating and are asking anyone in the area with CCTV or dash cam footage from that time to get in touch.
Hopefully they can find who is responsible. And one last item from Shetland, a rescue at sea.
That's right. The Lerwick lifeboat and the Coast Guard helicopter were involved in an operation to rescue an injured crew member from a fishing vessel.
Where did this happen?
About 25 miles southeast of Sundberg. The call for a medical evacuation came in around 1 p.m.
And was it successful?
Yes, the Coast Guard helicopter airlifted the casualty to the emergency landing site at Clickaman in Lerwick, and they were then transferred to the Scottish Ambulance Service around 2:45 p.m.
Good outcome there. Okay, that covers our sweep across the region.
It does. This news regional report has really touched on a wide range of issues, hasn't it? From Greenland's social welfare challenges and evolving economy,
to Iceland's stance on militarization and that fascinating historical legal ruling, plus the difficult Oscar case.
and the Faroes with their sporting success, the media rights debate, and those economic shifts in trade and ownership.
Yeah, and finally Shetland, dealing with healthcare pressures, potential strikes, and community safety concerns. It really highlights the diverse and dynamic nature of these North Atlantic communities.
Absolutely. Each story opens up more questions, really, about the forces shaping life in the region.
Like and subscribe to PalsFundamentals on YouTube for more videos like this. Sources linked below.